Let's talk about steps you can take if you have been stalked. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. So, I want to talk about some of the things that you can do if you are being stalked. Again, everyone's situation is different. I'm not privy to everyone's situation and or circumstances. I'm just going to tell you, and then this doesn't necessarily mean that, if you follow the steps that I take, because things are going to miraculously be healed, because I don't know your circumstances, but these are just generalized tips. I would always seek out additional experts for your case, and I can get into that in just a minute. So I think the first thing, because there's such a deep component of psychological warfare that takes place when you're being stalked, I think definitely, if you can, I think therapy should be first on your roster. Just to try and sign up for therapy. There's, if you don't have insurance, check with your state and or county to see what sort of government services you may be eligible for, because there are a lot of counties, and again, I'm not sure what's happening in terms of the current administration, but there are county funded programs typically in each county that may cover counseling services um, through like Medi-Cal or Medicaid or things like that. And again, I'm not sure what the status of those programs are. But there's also Open Path Collective, which is a free or low fee counseling services. Again, check to see if you're eligible for that in your state. Um, if you can't find any counseling services that are eligible, you can always call the National Domestic Violence Center. They have a 24/7 24-hour hotline that you can contact, and typically there's also a domestic violence center that is 24 hours in a lot of states and or counties. So just do a double check online to see what you can find. So that would be one of the things at the top. The other thing that I would mention is that you want to definitely keep documentation of everything that's happening, what you're encountering. Try to get as much evidence as possible, written documentation, receipts, videotapes, or audio if you can. So it's always a good idea to get as much documentation if you can. Take that to your local state police or city police department and report that issue. Depending on the type of stalking that's taking place or what's happening during the stalking, you can also contact the FBI if there's some other things going on like coercion, extortion and things like that. Definitely check out your local FBI office. And again, it's always helpful to have your documentation and your evidence in as organized as possible, in the order that you can follow as much as possible. So phone records, whatever the case may be, definitely keep records of everything and take that and report it to law enforcement. You can, it's always, I think if you can, it's always a good idea to go to law enforcement in person. So if you go to the police or the FBI, I think it's always a good idea to show up in person. Police departments get busy. Things that are low priority or they consider to be low priority, they get to it when they get to it. So I think it's always a good idea to show up in person so that they can connect a face to whatever's going on. You may be able to get faster results. It can be a little bit more difficult to shoo someone away when people show up for things in person, is what I'm trying to say. Again, that's not always the case. It's just a good idea. If you have the financial resources to do so, it could be a good thing to hire an attorney. You can hire an attorney that specializes in stalking, coercion, you know, what am I trying to say? When people are trying to black extortion, things like that. So you may be able to file a restraining order or civil restraining order through an attorney. You also may be eligible to go down to the court and file a restraining order yourself. Some people talk about not having as good results with that, but in a lot of cases, if you file a restraining order yourself, you can, again, depending on your county funding, you can call the domestic violence office in your city or county, and they may have someone that can assist you with that. So if not, and you hire an attorney, you can file a civil restraining order. You definitely want to find someone who specializes in that and who is aware of what all that process entails. And it's always a good idea. I say whenever you hire an attorney, always hire a trial attorney. So you want someone who's really going to go to bat for you, even if you never have to do that. But just, do your due diligence and find someone who can file that for you if you have the means and ability to do so. Another thing that I would recommend is, don't minimize stalking. Don't try to confront the person that's doing it unless you have to. Like, for example, if they show up at your house and you have no other choice, right? But definitely don't minimize it and say, oh, they'll go away, or it's really nothing, because in my experience, when you do that, people tend to escalate, and before you know it, it's just a mess of a situation that's gotten out of control. So definitely take it seriously from the get-go. If it's a situation where it's escalating, a person is showing up, they're showing up, they're breaking into your home, they're escalating in terms of violence, definitely consider getting means of protecting yourself. Whatever your comfortability is, that's what I would recommend. I would recommend getting something that is very quick and efficient and can knock someone off their feet, and that you do not hesitate in being able to utilize it. So, if you take self-defense classes, that's one thing, but you never know how much physical strength you're dealing with when you're dealing with someone. I typically don't tend to recommend mace. To each their own, but they use mace a lot in the prison system, and I don't know what strength it is that you have now, what they have now out there in the little keychains, but I know when they used it in the prison system, man, everyone, as soon as they sprayed it and it went off, everyone gets sick from that. So it can be quite strong. So you may want to look into other things like that, but definitely look into self-defense. Be sure to tell other people what's going on. So alert family members or friends or people that you trust. If it's a situation where people are following you and things like that, especially if you have to go to work, be sure to alert your job if your job has security and things like that, or a front desk. If that person tends to show up, people can also be on high alert. So those are definitely some safety tips. Amazon also has some books on stalking that can be helpful or useful to you. I hesitate to give a title because I haven't personally read any of those for patients and people like that in terms of self-help. I've read it from the diagnostic sense, so I don't want to give you a specific title of one. You could just sort of do your own searches on Google and or Amazon to see what's helpful, because if I don't endorse one, personally, I'm not going to necessarily give out the title. So again, results may vary. I hope this is helpful.